I see the bar moving now. All right, we're back. Am I audible now?
Hello, and we are back. Please, our wonderful chat friends, let us know if Kevin Broberg is audible. I mean, it was kind of nice for a little bit where Kevin Broberg couldn't speak, so we didn't have to listen to him. But he's an important part of this show. So back to the news. New Orleans PTC possibility of being canceled. What do you think, Kevin Broberg?
That's really rough. I mean, it kind of makes a degree of sense that, if you take a survey of the community and they say, well, when we originally scheduled this, there wasn't a U.S. Nationals on the calendar, so we'd rather go to that than this. And I know that in the past, I think like last year they had an incredibly competitive, like star-studded 18-player event. So it's not the hugest thing in the first place. I mean, as all too familiar with here in the Northeast. Um, so I think it's unfortunate. It's sad to hear that. I feel like there's kind of been a rash of PTZ cancellations recently, uh, which is disconcerting. I mean, I think it's important to figure out what's going wrong there and how to make that not happen again in the future, because that really sucks when events get canceled like that.
Well, looking back real briefly at PTCs and cancellations so far, we know that the Abilene PT was canceled due to a loss of venue. Was it the Santa Clara PTC in California was canceled? I'm sorry, not Santa Clara. That's October 8th and 9th. I believe there's another West Coast PTC canceled in December, which was promptly replaced by the Reno PTC. And then to lose New Orleans as well. I mean, that's kind of a bit of a shock because things are kind of on the upswing right now for UFS. I would have expected this to happen maybe here towards the beginning of the year when there was no sets coming out and stores would have some difficulty making that happen.
Yeah, I think
The
that.
chat has told me. Oh,
Oh,
I'm sorry to
go ahead. Go
interrupt you.
ahead.
I received a message from the chat saying that Bo Tucker's are also getting married around that time when
So
the
that makes
New
sense. It's
Orleans
kind of
PTC
a.
was going to occur.
I don't know if it's in poor taste to use the phrase "perfect storm," but it sounds like one of those.
Well, as long as the French Quarter doesn't end up underwater again, we're good. The chat has also told us it was the Riverside PTC that was canceled here in California. So hopefully, if there are some more PTC cancellations, they're enough in advance that, Jason and Jasco and company are able to perhaps find alternative venues for the event. However, we do need to make sure that they are sent out well enough in advance, especially for people playing the Player of the Year chase, have the opportunity to get their tickets and not have to pay $600 to get to a PTC.
Yeah. All right.
Let's
So
see. And actually, to tie up the news, the Reno PTC has been announced for December 3rd and 4th at Games Galore in Reno, Nevada. So I'm actually pretty excited about that one, Kevin. We started getting some orders trickling in from Reno earlier this year, and it sounds like they've built a pretty good sized play group.
oh, that's awesome to hear. Maybe they'll have to steal a page out of our play group, out of our playbook, and have the Nevada circuit have some traveling events there. Just,
It's a long ways from Reno to Las Vegas, though. That is a drive, and there is nothing in between.
oh yeah.
So I think it's time to move on to our main story tonight, and that is the September State of the Game. Came out shortly after our show last week. I think it came out last Thursday
That
or
sounds
Wednesday
right.
night.
Yeah. I
I
feel
think it
like
was
Thursday was
Thursday.
right. Yeah.
And there are some things talked about. We've kind of gone out of order here because the main story is going to come a little later. But let's start with the recap of Gen Con. They reported doing demos for UFS, Mega Man the board game, Top Gun, and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Reporting sales records being broken, and they had the Battle for Power preview, which I think we covered for the most part previously on the
Yeah.
show here.
Yeah, we talked
But
about
that's
Gen
still
Con
all good
as it
news.
happened, but now we have an official press release saying that Gen Con was a roaring success and telling us what we UFS players already knew, which is that Battle for Power has generated quite a lot of excitement, quite a lot of stir in the community. Um, so yeah, uh, where do you want to go to next on the state of the game, Sean? I'll leave it up to you.
Let's talk about the the release schedule. We're going to jump around on the schedule a little bit.
Yeah, that's
So
what I felt too.
nothing. We got a little bit of clarity about when some things were going to come out, and then things got a little more vague. So Red Horizon, which previously had a street date, I believe, of October 21st.
That meshes with my historical understanding. That is not happening.
That is no longer the case. So it has been moved to vague Q4 territory. So unfortunately, after releasing one set on the day it was supposed to come out, we have stopped with that trend again. Sounds like the delay is going to be pretty short, but I did kind of see how they quietly moved that back. They didn't really make a big deal out of it.
Yeah, that's I can't speak very much into detail on that because obviously I have no details. But I know it's moving from an aggressive stance to just like a normal stance. Like we have a roughly 3-month schedule, and after Battle for Power, there was only 2 months on the schedule before the next one, and that was kind of weird. Now it's kind of back into the normal kind of shape of things. So I don't feel as uncomfortable about it as I would if it were slipping kind of like from a 3 to a 4 month window.
Right. Well, my concern is Q4 is incredibly vague, which the end of the third quarter, for those of you who aren't really business people, is coming up here on 9/30. We move into Q4. So if the set still comes out, mid-November before the holidays, then I think we're in good shape. I just get concerned if we slide into December, late December, and then all of a sudden it's January. We're actually into Q1 of 2017.
Yeah, and December is really I think historically in a lot of games it's a remarkably poor time for sales. Just as a lot of people's disposable income gets tied up buying people gifts and doing stuff like that, and you don't have people showing up for tournaments because they are visiting family across the planet or whatever. There's a lot of things that can kind of they come first before your hobbies.
Yeah, so I mean it's a mixed bag. Some people are going to be real happy. A lot of people thought the sets were going to be coming out too fast, so they're going to be happy about that. However, people who want to get more sets out, so certain cards will rotate away, they've also got to wait.
Yeah.
So
we'll finally with the release for Blood Omen, we will finally have a normal standard environment again. We'll have rotated out all of the zombie sets from the Red Horizons.
So if they stay on the current schedule, they said that Q1 2017 will be Street Fighter.
Yes,
Q2 2017 will be Cowboy Bebop, and Q3 will be Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, so I think this is exciting news. When they announced Battle for Power and gave the release date for that, they also gave us Blood Omen, which was nice. But now we have vague targets, not precise spree dates, but we know the sequencing of these sets. We know they are really happening. We're finally going to get these 3 licenses that got announced last year at Gen Con, and got everyone really excited. I know just yesterday I was running some demos and I told someone, yeah, we're going to have Cowboy Bebop, and they were like, wow, that's awesome. So it's definitely going to add a whole lot of star power to the game to have these new licenses out, and we know it's actually happening.
I know there's going to be some people, and I've already seen in the chat here that we're getting Cowboy Bebop before Mortal Kombat. What are your thoughts on Cowboy Bebop coming out first, Kevin?
Well,
in the middle, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I never really cared about Street Fighter, so the fact that that's first is, I'm very much only interested in it for the UFS content, whereas the other two I'm super pumped about because, I mean, Cowboy Bebop's awesome, and I mean, I grew up on the Mortal Kombat movie. I grew up playing Mortal Kombat, so yeah, I wish Mortal Kombat were sooner. I love Mortal Kombat. But
yeah, overall, I think this is actually probably the best way to do it. You sandwich, because I love Cowboy Bebop. I don't think anybody on the show here doesn't like Cowboy Bebop. But as far as the general public goes, I think it's a smaller market to go after. I think more people are familiar with Street Fighter, more people are familiar with Mortal Kombat, and I think kind of sandwiching it in the middle is going to set them up for success. Instead of having Street Fighter then Mortal Kombat by Q3, people, their wallets are going to be tired. They're not going to be excited to buy, Cowboy Bebop as much as they would have been otherwise.
Yeah, I think it's. I can easily imagine a world where they could have sequenced it like Street Fighter 1, Mortal Kombat 1, Cowboy Bebop 1, and then Mortal Kombat 2, Street Fighter 2, Mortal Kombat 3, Street Fighter 3, and just been happy like that and had Cowboy Bebop kind of. Once we got the star power out of the way, now we're going to do our kind of like small. I almost want to call it an indie license compared to the mega blockbusters of these
Mhm.
major fighting games. Um, but I'm sure they had their reasons to do this. So
I'm sure their market research told them that this was the way to go. And honestly, I'm actually really excited to be getting a non-fighting game license into UFS. I mean, we got that a little bit with the World of Indies. We got a non-fighting game with Mega Man, and I think expanding out beyond just fighting games, I think is going to be really healthy for UFS because it's just going to
sure.
increase more people who are interested in the game.
Yeah, that could very well be it. Is that we want to get our first anime license in the game, get our first anime cards out the door, and start being able to steal people from Weiss Schwartz. On top of the hardcore anime fans, or on top of the hardcore video games fans and hardcore card gamers we
Mhm.
already got.
Yeah, so I think it's an excellent direction. I'm glad we have something sort of resembling a release schedule coming up, and I know as Jasco gets their house more and more in order, and it's noticeably more in order than it was a few months ago, that we'll start getting more hard dates. And
Yep.
as long as they can give hard dates and meet them, I think that's going to be really good for the image of UFS as a whole.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely if they can give us a hard date 4 months, 6 months in advance, and then nail that date. I think that's incredible. That speaks a lot to um, them getting their stuff together. That'll be a really good sign. So, on other news, to move down our schedule a little bit, we also in the state of the game, we had two somewhat more brief announcements. We have the official art for the U.S. Nationals playmat that you'll be able to get, which I did not prepare for you to put on the stream today, but you can check it out. Um, and also the date for UK Nationals has been announced.
You mean the Garrett Gets Easy Champ Cards Jamboree?
Hey, he doesn't always win historically.
I mean, yeah, there are UK events that he didn't travel to. You are correct. Well, I mean, there's no Phil Birch this year or Skullman, so he may have to build something different.
Yeah, I don't know. He like those were new decks when he built them. I mean, he built them better than a lot of other people have built them. It was still an achievement of technical mastery, even though it wasn't, you know, playing some bizarro off the wall character.
No, I know the British players are actually very excellent at UFS, but I mean, Garrett, compared to most UFS players here or anywhere, he's just on a different level from the rest of us mortals. At least for me. I know Kevin Broberg, you're on a different level too.
Sean, I think something might be wrong. Can you check your setup? I think your video seems to have frozen.
Oh no! Now my video's gone away.
Yep.
Now my video's back.
Hey, excellent. I love it when it's a Skype problem and not an OBS problem, so that way you can turn it off and turn it back on again without restarting the stream. All right. So yeah, we got UK Nationals, and you want to get into kind of the meaty parts of this? We can talk about.
Yeah, let's get into the meaty parts. Let's start with the direction of UFS. Now, one thing I think all of us have noticed with the last two sets is UFS design has taken a significantly different direction compared to since the World of Indies came out and before that. I think Jasco is pushing towards attacks overall being better. Unfortunately, I think they're getting a little too extreme. But their goal is they want games to end on turns 3 to 6. They want their characters to have more synergy with their support, which I think are all good things. Garrett might disagree. He probably wants games to go on to turn 30 because he likes a thinking man's UFS.
Well, yeah, I think that the kind of that's an admirable goal for the duration of a game, and you can definitely. I feel like if your game can't possibly end until turn 6, that means that one of the decks probably can't possibly win the matchup, and something in that range is probably about the sweet spot. If it goes much longer than that, people start having 25 card staging areas, and it's just unmanageable. Yeah. So I think that's an admirable goal. Like getting turn two isn't good for the guy going second. It's too much on your starting hand for them. Um,
Hmm.
and I think that characters. What do you think about characters with more synergy with their support specifically?
Well, I think overall the design team at all times in UFS has always wanted to have their characters have good synergy with their support, and I think that they're going to focus a little more on that because there were some characters I know in Rise of the Masters where some of their support cards just straight up didn't make sense with them
Yeah.
or were just bad with them. And I think that happened a couple of times in Warriors of the Night too. So I think overall that's good. What I and I know a lot of players are going to really like that. I know one of our locals loves when you can just take all the characters support and just cram them together. And I think that's going to make deck building for Turbo really, really easy.
Yeah.
My concern is if one character's theme ends up being better than another's, and they make 9 cards for a theme that might be a little too pushed, aka Turbo Man, that the character support can get out of hand really, really quickly.
Yeah, so yeah, there's definitely a risk, a danger here as well as I mean, it sounds nice on the surface. Yeah, let's have our characters work with each other, but kind of having cards that so there's two kind of things that you get by having less synergy with your characters. One of them is that it's harder to make structural mistakes where a single deck will dominate the format. So imagine like Pre-Ban's Turbo Man, which we'll get to in a minute, being the only deck that can ever compete with Pre-Ban's Turbo Man, and then everyone has to play Turbo Man, and you run into a horrible situation. And then the other problem is that you'll see cards that are both like staples in their character and completely worthless elsewhere. I know I talked to someone who was saying that he hates that Rocket Buster is a staple in base, just because it's just for base himself, it's like a 5 speed high for 8 stun one for 5 difficulty that has upside, and there are no cards that come close to as good as that. Even though it's a really lame looking card, you never want to put that in your deck
Unless you're
unless you get
base.
forced to by playing that character. Um,
See
and
that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
And I was going to say, on the opposite end of a card that has synergy with its character, and maybe I'm just like cherry picking here, but a card like Shoryudan works great with your character and also makes sense in a huge variety of decks. And I worry that you can like that's the other failure case of a character of too much synergy is you have cards that are one dimensional only in that character and fewer cards that kind of just that are just going to be like not even format staples, just cards you can always play and never feel embarrassed by. There's tools you can build your mastery of the game with.
Yeah, that's one thing that really concerns me about cards being too specific to their character. General Reaction in the chat mentioned one that I was going to talk about, and that's Tengu Man. Is his whole thing? His cards help him play one check cards, and if you don't plan to run one checks in your deck, which nobody I don't think can reliably do that besides Tengu Man right now, those cards are actually just. I guess my concern is that these cards, unless you play that character, will just be rocks in your collection. That you'll never find a home for them outside of that character's support.
Yeah,
and I worry.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I worry that too many cards will end up pigeonholed like that. Because one thing I like about opening a new set is I open a new set and I'm like, wow, this card is going to be really, really good with X character I like from before. And if the cards are too pigeonholed into their support, then they're not going to be very good for utility outside of that character.
Yeah, and I think there's another way to look at that too, which is even if it works with the right character, even if it works with a variety of characters, like I think Tengu Man might have the potential to, thanks to Jesse showing it to me, then you'll have kind of these structures in deck building where if you play one card, now you have to play these other 20 cards, and that's just already pre-decided for you, and you can maybe like get a small edge by like pushing your luck on some factor of it or another, and like instead of playing the whole 20 card package, you play like 3 of a bunch of the cards, and only play a 16 card package with 4 Tengu Slams and only like 3 of most of the rest of Tengu Man support. But it really just decreases the diversity of the game, and it decreases kind of the reward for um, the reward for mastery of actually figuring out all of the intricacies and the details, and it says, yeah, here's a prepackaged deck for you. And it's not like UFS couldn't stand to lower its complexity a little bit at times.
I just worry it takes away from the universal nature of the universal fighting system.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's one of the things I've always liked about it is, we advertise when we go to demo to new people. We're like, hey, have you ever wondered what would happen if Ryu could use Mega Man's Mega Buster? But if we get to a point where, well, Mega Buster's only good in Mega Man, then I think that's just going to hurt the overall playability of a lot of cards.
Yeah.
Whereas, with Rise of the Masters design, I can talk a little bit about that because I was more involved, is a lot of cards, while they didn't seem to quite fit in their character, there are obvious places to use it elsewhere in the game.
Yeah, I like the way that one of our chat viewers, I don't know if I should, I'm not going to call out your real name, but I like how Mr. General Reaction phrased it, that much of a character's support in this kind of design scheme can be at risk of just becoming virtually character only. It doesn't say character only on the card, but it says you can only, like, you have to be on these rails and probably using this as your starting character. And there's kind of another, like, another way to look at this is that we're trying to make it so there are fewer cards that are straight up unplayable in any circumstance. Like, a card like Rocket Buster is probably going to be pretty bad almost all of the time. By making it this super special thing for base that's going to be a character staple in every base build, needs to play some Rocket Busters because it just checks the boxes and does so much damage, then that card, which would otherwise be something like from the original Mega Man 10 Mega Buster that I don't think anyone's ever played competitively, now instead it's a staple for base. So there is an upside there too.
Yeah, and like I mentioned at the beginning of this, I think with characters being more synergistic with their support, it's going to help in some formats. When you're playing Turbo, it's going to be really easy to say, well, I'm playing base and all of base's attacks work really well for him. And that's going to help you build your deck. Yeah. But I worry that later on in Constructed, in Standard, that you're going to end up in a place where, it's hard to find cards outside of the character that you're going to want to use because everything is just so dialed in.
Yep. Or you'll be like, yeah, if we're going to play a base deck, well, we're going to explore a little bit outside of base. What are the 4 best attacks in the format that base can play? Oh, we can play Shield Ram. Let's see if we can fit this in here. And then that's as far as you need to explore, because for a fact that, like, it's never going to be worth it for base to play Tengu Dive, because even though Tengu Dive's a good card, it just doesn't fit with base at all, so it's never going to be good.
And I would recommend a lot of caution for the designers if they're going to make so many synergistic cards with a character when choosing your themes. We designed Skullman. His theme was cycling his hand, getting new cards all the time. And if you make 9 really good cards for something like cycling your hand, you could potentially end up with 9 broken cards.
Yeah. To touch on a slightly different topic, moving away from characters and their supports, I think there's 2 really interesting other specific points in here. They brought up that they want to put more you'll expect to see more +2 block modifiers on foundations, and also the quality of attacks will keep going up. So I honestly feel like these are both kind of like they're taking away an idea that they had. I think kind of an improvement that they came up with to UFS back in kind of this, like, the Sabretooth mini standard gate, not Sabretooth, sorry, the tail end of Fantasy Flight, and then into the more recent Jasco era, that foundations have bad blocks so that you can't build your deck full of foundations, and that attacks are good, but they're not the entire point of your deck. And so I was talking actually on the subject of base. I've experienced a lot with base decks that they can play a pretty good defensive game and they can deal a lot of damage, but they have no way to kind of win, like, to get incrementally closer to winning the game without just drawing the handful of attacks first. And I think with attacks and with foundations having worse blocks, I'm mixing up a bunch of ideas here. Sorry. when your attacks are better, there's kind of an impermanence to the game. If you're ahead, you're probably not ahead by that much unless your opponent is very low on vitality, and they're only very low on vitality if you could have killed them, or if in some way your opponent was afraid to block because you were going to kill them, or else they couldn't
Hmm.
block for some reason. And so I think that you're getting to a very dangerous territory where the games will be decided not by who plays better, but by who draws the handful of attacks and manipulates those probabilities the best. I know the Vegas players talked a little bit about, well, in this new fast metagame, why don't we just go second and start attacking on turn one because that's the best way to get ahead. And if that's something people are talking about, you have made a mistake. Like the game is
Yeah.
that is a degenerate case for UFS.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a little concerning because part of the reason why we've lived in a world. Kevin and I have both lived in the world where we have +1 and +2 block modifiers on foundations all the time,
Yeah.
and it was not really good because attacking becomes bad. I'm on the other end of the spectrum here, Kevin. Attacking becomes bad because it's too easy to block now, and so you're gonna play fewer attacks because all of a sudden you got good blocks on your foundations, and you're gonna build a bigger and bigger staging area, and you can have more foundations in your deck because more of them are going to roll better blocks. Because I like I said, I potentially see this going in the other direction. Where if everything all of a sudden has a carefree block on it, well, it doesn't matter if I pass my turn with 3 foundations in my hand because they're all +1 +2 blocks. I'm going to block next turn. And
Yeah.
then, attacks are going to have to become that much better to overcome the really good block modifiers. And then, I'm worried that there's going to be a lot of power creep.
Yeah, I definitely think that. I mean, when you say we're going to make this part of the game better, there's a very real danger of power creep right there. Just because you might not have completely understood everything else that was going on in the game that made it exactly as good as it was, and so you're just going to shove one part. You're just going to turn up one of the dials, and all the things that keep all the rest of the dials in balance might not be perfectly preserved. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I definitely think that if the game's going to be more about attacking, the thing I'm worried about is how do I win the games where I draw two attacks after my opponent, and I'm trying to backswing my opponent. How do I even have the idea of a backswing um, if people are just going to be jamming these huge attacks and destroy my staging area or whatever the whole time? Um,
Yeah.
how do I balance out, or like if my opponent builds 5 on turn one and I only have 3, and then they draw a pile of attacks, how do I win? Stuff like that. I don't know.
Yeah, it seems like with attack quality going up, it's going to start becoming less and less about who's the better player, at least I think in the mid-range level of play, and more about who drew 4 splams. Oh, look, I drew 4 splams. And then a Scorch Wheel. You're going to die now. Thanks for
Yeah.
playing UFS.
Yep.
And that's a little concerning. So, I mean, overall, I do like some of the things that have come out of the new direction, but I'm very concerned. I think that this set, Battle for Power, is certainly more powerful than the World of Indians. And I think
Yes.
overall, a lot of the attacks in World of Indians were better than the set before that.
Yep.
And it makes me a little concerned as to what is Blood Omen going to look like, because then Blood Omen's going to have to be a little better than Battle for Power. Then Street Fighter's going to have to be better than Blood Omen, and we got this power creep going and going and going until you just hope to draw 7 attacks and you kill your opponent on no foundations, and that's a scary world to be in.
Yeah.
And decks like that already exist.
Yep. I think
Maybe
there's
not on 0 foundations, but there are decks that can win on 1 or 2 foundations and
yeah,
just
and
draw
I
lots
mean,
of
I
attacks.
think that one of the things I worry about. I remember back when I was playing Slice Kicks, which was an incredibly overpowered deck. Was I figured if I go first, I'm going to win those games every time, and if I go second, well, I need to devote the rest of my deck that I can all the space I can afford to it, all the space I can afford to trying to just like, well, if I check a 5 on this block and have this go my way and this go my way and this go my way, I'll be able to steal a turn, and then it's like I went first on my turn too, and I'm going to kill him then.
Hmm.
And that's a dangerous place to be, and I think that's where you get to be with attacks being the best cards by a lot. I don't know. But
So let's move on to, I think, the most controversial topic we're going to talk about this week.
certainly
And that
a
is
much less speculative topic because we have concrete stuff in front of our face.
bans. So I think we're going to start off, Kevin, I think, with the more sensible ban that I think
All right.
overall we think people think was a good idea, and that was DeForester. For those of you unfamiliar with DeForester, which I think everybody knows about it, it allowed you to destroy a face-down foundation,
Oh.
and then if the top card of then you put a card from your hand into your staging area face down, and then if the top card of your discard pile happened to not be a foundation, you draw a card.
I've got pictures of the 3 cards we're going to be talking about here, by the way.
Oh,
So,
okay. I did not know that.
Yeah, so effectively,
And so,
what DeForester allowed you to do, provided that you constructed your deck with very few actual foundation cards and had a way to get some face downs in your staging area that weren't foundations in the first place, was during every attack, if you had a committed face down non-foundation card, you would blow it up and then replace it with a card from your hand and then draw a new card. So you'd be able to filter through your deck a lot like Skullman very rapidly and also get a pile of free foundations while you're doing it.
and so, I mean, this ability, I think it's incredibly powerful. Getting to ready your staging area, because if you had 2 DeForesters out, a bad check didn't end your turn.
Yeah.
Because you could potentially get 2 freebie foundations and be back to where you were before.
Yeah, so this card was invented. I mean, it's a Metal Man card. It's got a Metal Man E on it, and its second ability is explicitly fits with Metal Man's theme, which was the idea being you destroy a face-down attack you stowed down by hitting your opponent earlier, and you get to replace it, and you get this powerful effect of readying a foundation plus drawing a new card at the cost of the worst card in your hand. And the thing was that they didn't kind of account for this card appropriately while designing new cards. It became too easy to build decks with very low foundation counts, and it became too easy to get face-down cards in your staging area to satisfy this.
Exactly. Coupled with Tamayose and a bunch of, I think very playable assets on Void, made it pretty easy to always have face-down non-foundations and not be Metal Man. Kevin, your Assets Athena deck is almost notorious at this point for it, having gone 18-1 at the World Championship last year. Well, earlier this year.
Yeah, and also I think it reached top 8 berths in at least 2 PTCs. But it has failed to win any events, actually. Which I think is, well, except for teams.
Hey, you won Team Worlds with it.
I didn't finish my match. I was winning, but I had not won.
So, I mean, overall, I think DeForester's not a bad ban. I think, care wasn't taken when it was designed, and then Warriors of the Night came out with Tamayose, which said if you happen to have 2 assets in your staging area, you get 2 free face downs. And in a deck constructed with very few foundations, you're extremely likely to get the 2 face down non-foundation cards you need to turn on DeForester.
Yep. And
then
the explicit justification for banning this one was that no single foundation should be able to draw this many cards or provide this many foundations, like pass this many control checks, where 1 DeForester in an extended attack turn could easily provide you with 5 or 7 or 10 your control checks to pass them.
Right. And then, to top it all off, it was already extremely competitive card that people knew was very, very powerful. They printed Scorch Wheel, which said, and I tested out a deck last week shortly after the ban, where you can draw like 21 cards.
Yeah.
Because you had a DeForester that turn.
Yeah.
For every foundation you put into your staging area.
Yeah, Scorch Wheel and DeForester. Yeah, no, it's not happening. It's kind of like Diplomatic, where in this case, it's every attack you play lets you draw a card, and then your Scorch Wheel draws you another card when you finally find a Scorch Wheel. And when you play that Scorch Wheel, guess what? No progress. Anyway.
So Kevin Broberg, we'll take a vote. Good ban or bad ban? I say it's a good ban.
Yeah, good ban. I think both of these were good bans.
Good ban.
The format is better for these cards not being in it.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Tamayose now.
Yeah.
This card, for me, see, I don't agree that this was a good ban, and I'm going to go into detail here in a minute why. Do we have Tamayose up?
Yep. So if you're not familiar with this one, just read the first ability. That's all that matters.
It just says form if you have two assets, get two face down foundations.
Yep.
That's the relevant part. And so this really fuels DeForester, which fuels the stupid Turbo Man Scorch Wheel deck where you draw potato cards. And so the justification for banning this card was, while most players view this card as fuel for DeForester decks, this card still creates unfair situations that are in favor of the player who plays it. On top of it all, this card does not follow resource symbol identity. Building free foundations is a property of the good resource symbol, which this card does not have. And so I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop them right there. I don't think that's really the justification for banning this card. The reason why they banned this card is they printed Scorch Wheel. Scorch Wheel is the reason for both bans. And as you mentioned before, there's a smoking gun.
Yep.
They knew that it was too good.
Scorch Wheel.
Tell them about the
I'll pull Scorch Wheel up here right now. So this card has a gender male enhance on it. And that means we didn't want half of the cast to have access to this card, which conveniently, one fraction of that gender female part of the cast was named Athena, who would be guaranteed to draw two cards off of this, and also just had a dominant performance at Worlds. So they wanted to keep this card not quite under wraps, but keep it from slotting in too naturally into a existing dominant deck. So like you don't put this kind of restriction on things just kind of on the spur of the moment. This card doesn't this card doesn't make sense sort of in the same way that Hikaru's cards make sense as like part of a balanced pair where, you know, each resource symbol gets its own little thing. This is through and through just we want to preserve the balance of the game while printing this absurdly broken effect.
Right. So they knew that this was already a problem. And so one of the things that really concerns me about design right now is we know that Jasco Games did a lot of redesign work for Indies and Battle for Power. They talked about how they took it in a different direction and they did a lot of new design stuff. And my question to them is, why would you print a card that you knew would result in a different card getting banned?
Yeah. I think it's...
I mean,
it's
the way I see this,
it's very interesting to me that Tamiyose gets banned for building free foundations, and that's like the symbol identity thing. And then here's a card that shares two symbols with Tamiyose on a character whose theme is building free foundations.
Yeah. And the way I see it is they deliberately printed this card knowing that they would have to ban cards in people's collections already. And it seems like they could have maybe printed, Scorch Wheel maybe late in the cycle when Tamiyose and DeForester were either gone or about to be gone, rather than deliberately making it so they had to ban cards in people's collections, because they already knew it was going to be a problem. I mean, I don't think they could say to me with straight face saying, well, we knew this wasn't going to happen. We didn't think this was going to happen. Because the cards were legal together for like 6 days.
Yeah.
And so it just, I think it's disappointing that they went ahead and printed Scorch Wheel anyhow, knowing that they would have to ban Tamiyose.
Yeah, the thing that kind of gets me a little bit about Turboman support is that I wish I'd prepared to actually say this, because I could have some pictures of the old K-Dash and Team Maxima support, which I felt like did this whole fast foundations idea a lot better. And cards like Not a Clone or More Than a Clone or M4 Vapor Cannon have seen fairly limited competitive play, if any at all. And the reason for that is that they're not broken. They don't allow you to do degenerate things when you draw the perfect hand. They have a limit, which is either being conditional on your opponent acting to add foundations to your staging area, or adding them committed. I think that Tamiyose, if it didn't add them ready to your staging area, and same thing with DeForester, although it'd be a pretty boring card at that point, there are ways around this where you don't allow for the creation of these positive feedback loops where as you play more attacks, you get more foundations, you get more draws to find more attacks to repeat. And Scorch Wheel, I think in the interest of making an exciting card, a card that you see and say, wow, this is incredibly broken, let me go build a deck around this, it kind of abandoned some of the principles that you can use to make your game not so much to make your game balanced, but to prevent your mistakes from breaking the game. And
Hmm.
Scorch Wheel, if there is a mistake, like you make a mistake around Scorch Wheel, it breaks the game. And we saw that, like,
Yeah.
if you played with the Turbo Man deck, that literally does broken things. Like, you can have a pile of revokes and still lose to it. It doesn't need an exceptionally good draw to do 30 damage on turn two, to draw its deck on turn two. And I think that, like, if you can, it's a good practice to structure things so that your mistakes don't collapse the building. Like that a structural engineer doesn't accidentally have his building fall over, even though he's a human and he can make mistakes. It's not literally perfect, but
Hmm. Yeah, I think that a lot of things happen in such a way that a lot of these things could have been prevented, that maybe Tamayose wouldn't have needed to be banned.
yeah,
And I think anytime, card that became hard to get, and starts going up in price gets banned, I don't like that. I don't like when people, go out of their way to get cards because they want to build a powerful deck, because who doesn't like powerful decks? And then the company be like, well, we're just going to print this broken thing anyhow and devalue your collection.
yeah,
I don't like it. I mean, I think Tamayose was a good ban because of the mistakes that were made to leading up to where we are today, but it's a bad ban because we didn't need to be in this situation.
yeah. Back on the subject of Tommy Yosei really quickly. I actually disagree with them about it being inherently unfair. I think that having two or more assets, especially in a world where they're going to keep printing cards like Spine Sweep that completely obliterate assets, regardless of how fair they may be. I think that's a reasonable cost, and this just kind of pays you back for playing cards that don't commit for control checks. It's a little overpowering if you draw a bunch of them and then draw a bunch of 6 difficulty cards that you can now pass because of having a bunch of foundations. But if you're playing Bishamon or something and you put this in your deck, well, you put 2 foundations down because that's where you want to be, and then you're just getting caught up to everyone else who just plays foundations instead of assets.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, I think I don't know if there's just been this attack on assets, but it seems like over the past part of the design cycle, assets have just been getting worse and worse and worse. Like, and average assets aren't going to see play. You're never going to. I don't think you're going to be able to play things like Grandmother's Hairpin, even though you're playing a my deck. The underpowered assets, they're not worth running. They're risky. And Tamayose was kind of a way to pay you off for playing an underpowered asset. And now you don't get paid off. Now you just get spine sweeped and you feel like an idiot because you played two assets.
yeah, yeah, like cards like the Malta, or I remember in one thread, it might have been on Facebook. One of the old judges of UFS community was like aghast that Silver Fang, one of Miska's cards, had finally seen playing in a deck, and like you want these bad cards to be playable. So like that's one of the goals. That there are no bad cards in UFS, and I think right now the category of assets, you have to be a Drew Maffei Lion Buddy or a Hanya or something of that caliber to be able to see play.
A
And
Rochester CCG.
yeah, like Rockstar CCG is I was like you're trying to make me call you overpowered, John O'Brien.
No, we're not. Our card is completely fair. But yeah, they've. I feel like, and it's just been attacking assets, attacking assets, attacking assets, and I think for a little bit, unless you have a really overpowered asset, it's just not going to be playable as a
Yeah,
result, which
yeah.
which is a damn shame.
I think I mean, it's a manifestation of power creep, right? Like you have to print better answers to keep up with your better threats, and they keep printing better assets, so they need better anti-asset cards, and everything that gets left behind in the power creep is just looks sad. Like if you printed Shoryudan in this set, I don't know if it would be spicy. I don't know if people would be interested because you can be playing 8 damage somersault kicks in your base deck. You can be playing Scorch Wheels. You can be playing Tengu Dives and a simple just workman like grindy card that's going to put you a little bit ahead. You got to play it. You got to time it right and get your opponent with their pants down. It's just not something you can be not something you'd sign up for with the power creep going on.
Mm-hmm. So and then as far as bans go, I gotta say there are a couple of cards I think missed being banned that probably should have been banned, and one of them is kind of on the same lines here, and that's Summer Heat. I feel that Summer Heat is a single foundation that should not let a player draw and ready so many cards. I feel like Summer Heat fits exactly in the DeForester category.
So
it readies itself every single turn.
What's your opinion on Siberian Scientist? You know that one?
Siberian Scientist is a 3 difficulty card, and you have to pay a cost to ready it and draw a card.
You had to pay a cost to Forester.
Yeah, but you don't pay a cost at all with Summer Heat.
But
you just play it, and off of All Right now with things like Weapons Armor Expert, you just put that thing back in your hand every single turn. So, I mean, I think Summer Heat should have been banned for the same reason we banned DeForester. But like I said a few weeks ago, Jasco Games, I believe, is either unwilling or unable to do anything about the air symbol.
Well, still, I think what they did with the air symbol is they printed budget constraints that hates on air. They printed a couple new anti-Templar cards like admissions fees, and yes, I just named 2 cards with the air symbol. Deal with it. And they also just printed cards that are better. I think that the air symbol, the best air decks are still using Shield Rams and Delta Kicks and Ryujin Kyakus, mostly the latter two, like Nevoses and stuff. And I think that everyone else is kind of catching up to Nevos right now. Where Nevos may have been at one point the uncontested best attack in Standard, now it's just middle of the pack again. So you don't necessarily need to ban stuff, especially if you have the power creep going on.
That's true. I suppose if all the rest of the cards get good enough that Summer Heat becomes a fair card and Artifice Avarice become a fair card, then I guess everything's fine.
Yeah, that's the spirit.
So what you're saying is we should just print better cards so we don't have to ban anything.
Yeah, just give them the Yu-Gi-Oh treatment,
We should just give all 12 symbols to Forrester.
Virtually ban every deck by just making it obsolete next week. Oh, you're playing Bishamon? That's cool. Bishamon, we printed Bishamon, but his assets tap for 2 instead of 1 foundation. Get with the times, sucker.
But yeah, I mean, I'm sure people probably expected me to get on here and rant and rave that they didn't ban Ever Hopeful or Zime's Wheel Kick. But, overall, I think I'm fine with those cards now, especially since there's no extended format that people play, so Zime's Wheel Kick's actually irrelevant. But, in all seriousness, I think Summer Heat probably should have gotten tapped with a hammer, and I think Jasco Games is just unwilling to do it. Well, but we can agree to disagree on that, I think, Kevin Broberg.
Yeah, maybe if you build a deck, you might come around if you've experienced the joy of Summer Heat for yourself.
I have experienced the joy of Summer Heat for myself. I've experienced it coming and going. And, when Giggles plays a Summer Heat and checks an Artifice Avarice, I don't really want to play UFS anymore.
Why not? All he's doing is drawing cards. They're probably shitty cards if that's all his deck is. That's how I feel. I remember actually I played a game with Andrew the other day, and I failed my second card, and he drew 14. He built 14 foundations before I had 6, and my hand was just kept getting filled up with throw it downs and attacks, and I literally had. I remember at one point I literally had a Stacker Mega Man, an asset, and I played a throw it down and a move. And he had to decide to either dodge and bounce my Summer Heat because it was my only foundation, or play a block. He wanted to dodge to Stone Rain me, but it was literally my only foundation. It was turn 4, and that was all I had in play. And I had a shot.
So we're back to where people don't play any foundations, just play 7 attacks every turn. like we talked about earlier in the show.
Well, like I had a chance to win that game. Is the point I'm making? I was behind by a million light years, and like that's all that happens when your opponent checks Artifice Avarice or plays Summer Heat is they get a little bit ahead of you, and you can always claw back.
You can, but it just feels like it's really difficult. I mean, you've stared down a Summer Heat Artifice Avarice deck in the finals of the Rochester PTC, and you got soul crushed because Giggles got super lucky.
I mean, like sometimes you buy a lottery ticket and there's a glitch and you win the lottery twice. Yeah, that happens. And sometimes it happens with the guy sitting next to you. Like it's cool.
But yeah, I mean, if we're talking about buying lottery tickets, if that's the analogy we want to use,
that's not a problem with any of these cards. Like, you can get insanely lucky and turn 2 Trinity Geyser someone with only 1 Trinity Geyser in your deck. That's not like the fault of Artifice Avarice or Summer Heat.
No, the fault of Artifice Avarice or Summer Heat is if you buy a lottery ticket and then you get 6 more lottery tickets for free, just for buying a lottery ticket. Because that's what it feels like.
The lottery ticket is when 6 things consecutively go right for you, and like there's a limit on how much things can go right before you hit diminishing returns. Like playing a 13 hand size character isn't as much better than a 12 hand size character as a 6 to a 7 is. You know what I mean?
We should print a 13 hand size character.
The question would be, how hard is it to shuffle the deck you actually want to build with a 13 hand size character? Because it is a lot more than 60. Like I remember there was a thread where like this came up, and Garrett actually this was actually a step to my enlightenment of not building a deck with only 4 ofs. Was yeah, if you, like I said, if you hit the diminishing returns, where like you're not interested in more hand size after like 10 or 15 or something, and Garrett's like, nah, you just build a bigger deck, and then you get the card selection from your 13 hand size. Just play the 6 best cards every turn. And it's like the 6 best cards in this matchup. Still, that doesn't have a ceiling where the optimal 6 cards for every matchup can be balanced out.
All right. Well, let's get away from bands because we're running short on time here. Let's go to Kevin's top 5.
All right. I've got
top 5 challenges to effective demoing.
Yeah, so we are completely out of the pie in the sky. We are down like boots on the ground, boots to asses, whatever. And what can go wrong during demos. And so today I'm just going to tell you what the 5 problems, in my opinion, the 5 biggest problems. And next week I'm going to tell you how to fix these problems. And I'll give you a quick rundown then too. But so the 5th problem, we are short on time, so real quick, are bad demo decks, just decks that, just fail to satisfy the goals of of what you want from a demo. Number 4 is there's a ton of ground to cover, a ton of just things to teach someone before you can really even participate in a game of UFS, let alone have fun. I found that that's a big deal. Number 3 is just finding guinea pigs, finding people who want to learn to play UFS, who are actually interested, who will have the time to sit down and the attention span to sit down and play with you, and who know how to add, for example. That's a pretty big prerequisite, which I've been on the wrong end of before. Anyway, number 2 is that the rules can be very complex. People can easily get lost or feel kind of feel misled or feel like betrayed by the rules of the game. Like, oh, I thought this would work one way and it worked a different way, and then just turns them off completely. And then the number 1 problem I found is that people just don't remember. People walk away from a demo, and the next day they're dead to the world. Like, they have no idea what UFS was anymore. They've completely forgotten it, and you never see them again. And I have solutions of sorts to these problems, and I have ways to mitigate them for sure. Tune in next week on Top Deck Heroes.
All right, so a quick follow-up at the end of the show here before we go on to the upcoming events is last week we talked about the local UFS economy and the bad things that can happen that could cause your economy to shrink or stop existing completely. And I want to follow this over the next few months to let you guys know where we end up. We found out last week that our local brick and mortar store will no longer be carrying UFS, which is a little disheartening. However, the store owner is really, really cool, and he's going to let us keep playing there. But he said it just doesn't make sense to have UFS. It's his slowest moving category. which, I mean, we were kind of set up for that when we didn't release any product for a year.
Yep.
So
And that shelf space just has better things to go to.
hmm And so, here in Rochester, we're kind of going into an interesting time where, we can't necessarily direct people to our brick and mortar store if they're looking to purchase some UFS product. We're trying to find some new blood. I know Kevin and one of our other people have been going to the local card game and board gaming club at the local college every week, trying to find some new UFS players. And we're going to keep you guys apprised to what happens as this continues to unfold. So, we're going to try to see what happens, make sure we can keep our local economy going here in Rochester. Which, I mean, fortunately, I don't want to toot my own horn, but, since we do have Rochester CCG, it doesn't mean that we're just out of places to get cards.
Yep.
So that's a good thing.
We talked about our economy isn't just the amount of things being bought and sold at a store. It's about how much people are engaging with the game and how much people care about the game, and that's going as strong as ever. So
we'll keep you guys apprised as that goes on, but let's talk about some upcoming events. Now, my understanding here is I got to go back into the chat a little bit. There is a PTC coming up this weekend, I believe, in Colchester in the United Kingdom.
Yep.
So that's pretty exciting. Good luck to all of our British players this coming weekend in your PTC. Now, I understand their PTCs work a little different from ours. So I don't quite remember what their pricing is, but good luck to all of them. Our next PTC stateside is the Warren PTC, September 24th and 25th in Warren, Michigan. That's coming up pretty quickly. I got to think about getting a hotel. I think Slam's going to be upset if I end up missing this event. So that's 3 weeks from Friday, actually. That's coming up really, really fast. So
wait, is it 3 weeks?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's 3 weeks.
These numbers can't
weekend.
Be right, can they? 24. This says
24th
and 25th. That's not right because that's 17. No, maybe. Yeah, never mind. It's less than 3 weeks.
Yeah, so 24th and 25th.
21 days. This is like.
Yeah, you're right. It's 2 weeks from this Saturday is the Michigan PTC, so that's pretty exciting. The Santa Clara PTC is coming up here on the 8th and 9th of October at Game Castle in Santa Clara, California. U.S. Nationals coming up October 14th to 16th at the Holiday Inn in Atlanta, Georgia. The East Coast big cardboard tournament, kind of like Nevada's the West Coast cardboard tournament.
Yep.
We got the New Orleans PTC is still on the books technically, October 29th to 30th at Go 4 Games in New Orleans, Louisiana.
Then we've got the Rockford PTC. I'm going to jump in to close these out because I got to pee. November 5th and 6th at Top Cut Comics in Rockford, Illinois. I'll be at that one, so that'll be a great time. The round 2 of Poughkeepsie PTC, November 19th and 20th at Champion Card Collector down in Poughkeepsie, New York. I'll be there too. And then finally, for the schedule so far, the Reno PTC on December 3rd and 4th at Games Galore in Reno, Nevada.
So that's going to be really exciting. I hope to see a lot of people go to these events because we need PTC turnouts to be really good. And with that, I think we're going to call it a week. We will see everybody next week, same time, same channel. Good night.
Take care, everyone.